that. So I just want to personally now ask you a question. So you have a psychology practice, right?
I have. I mean, I don't now. I'm doing more
now because of his book.
No.
Because of his book, he's really just traveling around doing this more of the time. Is that?
I'm doing this, these kind of trainings, and I have individual sessions with people, but now they're around fine-tuning embodied awakening.
Because, what I was going to ask was if you had a psychology
Yes.
practice, which you have had over the years,
Yes.
how this has affected
Right.
your work with that.
Yes.
Because how many people go to a psychologist and they're talking about this? That's not
right.
usually, it's
That's
usually,
not usually
how
the
did that
case.
make you
That's
feel?
right.
And, it was your
Or your
mother, or your
personal
father.
history.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the personal history is still part of the, fullness of your humanity, but this, awake awareness has been referred to as the ultimate medicine. So.
Did it shift did your whole practice, because you've been developing this for
Yes,
years. This
that's
didn't
No.
just happen when the book came out. The
That's
book
right.
was a result of your years of doing this.
Yes.
So you had a psychology practice as you were working on this.
Yes, I kind of did a joint degree with spirituality and psychology,
Oh.
and actually went off on a fellowship to Sri Lanka, India, and Nepal first, so that I had, I came back
So
and
from
then
the
did
beginning
the
you had that
training.
connection.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so early on was doing mindfulness-based psychotherapy, but then it developed into more awareness-based psychotherapy, and then more
see.
awakening-based.
So it was always
Yeah.
integrated in
Is
your
always
practice.
integrated somewhat, but my own development, as many of us, started with more meditation-oriented, and then as I developed these kind of syntheses or these, more direct glimpse practices, I started to realize, okay, well, let's introduce people into this awareness-based true nature, this bigger sense of self, and then have that come and basically love up or
Love up.
love up the trauma and the
Sounded like a hippie.
kind of love, compassionately relate or embrace the traumatic parts or the shadow parts or the emotions that couldn't be tolerated by the ego or the old, or liberate the repressed contents that are too much for a small sense of self. So in some ways, you can really only grow up to a certain level, and then you have to wake up and what I call wake up, and then wake in, and then wake out to life. So 3 levels of awakening in order to continue to grow up or live a full human life. That even, those people who I've dealt with in psychotherapy and in life who have literally the most developed egos, the most successful human beings, who have all their ducks in a row, who are successful and have family lives and they're physically well and they're come to me and say, is that all there is? I'm miserable. Because they have perpetual dissatisfaction because they're living from this yes but
Critical mind. Yeah.
that can function
Perfectionist.
and learn to control and some, most of us don't do that well, but
Right.
some people who, even those who do it well and have lived, the dream, are when they relax for one moment are miserable
Right.
because they've actually developed. The smarter you are, the more difficult it becomes.
The more
because
complex you
the
don't.
more complex and anxious
Yeah.
you are,
Well,
because your mind is saying, yeah, but what about this? and what
really
about that? Remember
intricate
this?
system you've
Yeah.
developed to function
That's
at
right.
that level. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
Yeah. We tried that.
I can understand that. I relate to that. I am a card-carrying member of that group.
Yeah.
Do you train psychologists? Do you do
Yes.
workshops for? Because I think that
Yeah.
is a very powerful thing that, you know, if the whole psychology profession just really, and I know there's more mindfulness based, and I know a woman in Cambridge who runs a mindfulness psychology group. And there is more mindfulness coming into psychology, but you're bringing in another
this is another dimension.
And
I was doing it on my own and had kind of developed my own kind of awakening based therapy, but then
awakening based therapy. Love it. There's another title there.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
But then I met about 5 years ago and was introduced to a type of therapy from a therapist called IFS therapy, internal family systems is the name of it, but it's not necessarily your family inside. But Dick Schwartz had developed this system, which basically was my system except backwards. In other words, he would introduce you immediately to the parts of yourself that were suffering, and then have you step back to realize, to ask, are you aware of that part? Is that part aware of you? How do you feel toward that part? And the you started to become, he found, like what he called grounded being or true self. All of a sudden, all the parts that you usually identified with would be seen, but it wasn't even from a mindful witness. It literally was more what he called true nature.
Right.
And then he really did a fine job of delineating the types of parts and the relationships of, hidden parts or shadow parts or exiled or child parts, hurt parts, and then protectors, and then managers, and then firefighters that act out, but
firefighters, managers. This is great.
So it's
a
really intricate
it's really
system.
Interesting.
That's similar to some other systems.
Yeah.
But the unique thing was the self. But he hadn't, in any detail, developed what the self was. He would just trust that you'd go there.
Right.
And so then I presented at this conference just this last year, and he sat in the back and went, "Let's go to lunch."
That's the missing ingredient.
And now we're going to do
You're going to work together.
We're going to work together. We're going to do a retreat in Italy.
Perfect. Well, there. Are you a psychologist? You would like to go to Italy? Perfect, because, as you teach this and help everyone, and so people on a spiritual path will come and drink the water and learn or whatever. But once you can kind of help the people who are helping people,
that's right.
That's got such potential there, and you're coming in on not just the people who are helping people, because you're helping meditation teachers help people, but coming in that the whole psychology modality, and because that's so established, and there's an incredible potential there. So I'm very excited about that. So that conference will be the first time you guys.
We're going to do a retreat together in the spring. And
have you gotten together and written stuff out, or you just
we'll probably end up just
doing it on the fly and work it out?
Yeah, but we'll work it out, and he has a part of the piece
probably,
of the pie, and I have another piece, we'll kind of do a little Mutt and Jeff kind of back and forth.
Yeah.
But the psychology piece is important for everyone, because otherwise many meditators end up in the spiritual bypass.
Yeah.
So they think, and especially
I don't have to do this other work.
There's either, like, the extreme forms are the people who are real strong meditators who actually repress the contents of their minds, and you can do this with a very strong, especially concentration practice, or even fine noting and observing, where you almost deconstruct, and then you think, well, I have no problems, but then you end up saying, and yet, what kind of tea would you like? All teas are the same. There's no need for a choice of tea, but tea will arrive and I will drink it. If there's an eye to drink it, drinking will happen. So there's and as if that's the goal.
Right.
Or
to not feel. People will say, I want to get to where
beyond
I don't
emotion.
Feel.
Right.
Yeah, and I'd say, well, no, you want to feel fully. You want to be informed by your emotions and have them direct you, and not get down there and distort your perception of behavior in some way.
Yeah.
Or get where you're numbed out or something like that.
Yeah,
So,
and then the other group, so that's kind of the numbed out repressed emotion type. And then the other one that is often the eddy or the kind of cul-de-sac people get caught in is stepping out of the mind into pure awareness and remaining as no self or witnessing self. So that stage, there's a lot of people in that from certain traditions that you can observe. You're out of your suffering body, but you're also out of your humanity. And you get caught, and it gets very dry and very spacey and loses the juice. And unless they come back and include the body and become more open-hearted, they've kind of, sometimes I say it's like they were driving from the East Coast to the West Coast, and they got to the Grand Canyon, and they just set up camp there. But it's the desert, and the water's way down
there.
It's beautiful.
It's great. Look at the space.
Look at the space.
Look at that space. My God, it's so big. Right.
There's not a lot of people. There's a few mules there.
Right. I don't talk to people, but great space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are kind of some of the traps and detours that are possible. So this, like we were saying, as the metaphor was, both of us kind of said, you start to feel like a kid on the first day of your summer vacation.
Yeah.
That's the feeling. Like you want to be like curious and this is great. I don't have that suffering judge in my head, and yet I'm in my body and I respect other people. I'm not spiritually bypassing in an adolescent acting out like there's no rules, it's all play, so I can just do what I want with people, and act out in that kind
get
of guru
trouble
way.
In that way. Yeah.
So this is like, no, everyone's me. So of course I'm going to treat them with respect.
Right. And that's what I also, one thing I'm drawn to here, because I do like that. I think it should all be fascinating and fun.
Yeah.
And the whole, I know I'm watching my breath for the 10th hour, and and I'm like, slit my wrist now. Although there's value there, I'm not dissing that as a path, but I do think that our sensory experience is fascinating. I do think that this seeing the sensory experience from another perspective.
Right.
I just find it. It's just like fascinating, exploring, childlike fun. Like it's a ride. There's that freedom, but it's also you're absorbing information. So it's not without wisdom. Your sense of self is larger, wiser, but still cool.
Fully human.
Yeah,
right.
It's cool, and that connection. And I do like how you emphasize, and I've probably said this now 5 times, but you don't say, okay, we're going to do this now. Next week we'll take it into the heart. Now next week we'll go out to. You literally right there. You'll stand up in front of everyone and you'll say, okay, we're going to do this. We're doing the mind now. Bring it down to the heart. Okay, now go out there. Now come in. Now you're going in and out. No.
So basically, I mean, there's many systems that talk about dimensions of consciousness that are primary and most relevant for awakening and stabilizing awakening. And I think I quote in my book that Ken Wilber, who studied like everything in the world and has maps of the whole thing, says
good maps.
If you look at wisdom traditions, you will see that they have 4 to 5 levels of consciousness that are primary. So what I do is I literally, and I'll do it now with my hands.
Do it. His hands. This is my favorite part.
I literally take people from the first level of consciousness, which is called everyday mind or ego consciousness, and then you either can step up into subtle mind, which is mindful witness, or drop down into subtle body, which is kind of where yoga consciousness and chanting and mantra and inner body bliss is feeling. And then you step out into the third level, which is pure awareness. And then the key is that awareness becomes aware of awareness. And that is without thought and out of your senses, that awareness is actually awarenessing, knowing itself as itself, just as awareness. And then as that awareness, so you've kind of have been aware of the spacious awareness, and now you're aware from the spacious awareness, which is a continuous field of awareness that's arising as aliveness within your body. So there's this feeling of spacious and pervasive, arising dance of consciousness that first feels like it's outside and in equally, and then there's a sense that it's also within everyone else and within you, and there's a feeling you've dropped from head to heart, and so there's this heart-mind online, which is open-hearted awareness, which is made of awareness. The ground is awareness, and it's meeting your humanness, and so there's a ground of being, which is the human being that's grounded in awareness, intelligence, and then the intelligence has this love or joy and bliss, and then from there you can create and relate. And you've kind of shifted systems from the first primary system of thought-based identity, and now you're in awareness, embodied, open-hearted identity. So you got that going.
That's what I wanted him to do. That was it. Listen, it's all fluid. The movement's fluid, and I love that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you,
Was this fun? Was that fun? This was fun for me.
Me too.
Thank you so
Yes.
much. This is great.
So
Yeah,
fun,
heart, applause, hug.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm good. All right.